All right, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dakshu. I am the HSR advisor at SafeWork. With me, I have the lovely Alison, who's the team leader of community and business services team in the inspectorate that's predominantly running this audit. We're doing this audit in support with United Workers Union, Clubs SA, and Australian Hotel Associations. Just some quick housekeeping rules, guys. Please keep your microphones on mute. I think the webinar is set up in a way where when you come in, your microphones are already on mute, but accidentally, if you see it's turned on, just turn them off. Cameras are optional, and we'd encourage if you're comfortable. Feel free to put in any of your questions in the chat box. Darcy, who's from our communications team, is moderating the chat box. So if she's able to answer any queries, she'll give you all the required answers. But if there's something that's more complex and that's specifically subject matter oriented, then we'll take them at the end when it's the end of the session. So do feel free to put any of your questions that are coming in. Yeah, and I'll also want to remind you that please be mindful when you're giving any specific examples of anything that's happening in your business. Just be mindful to not give any names of your colleagues or your managers and things like that, just to respect their privacy. I know tech is not my best of my friends. I've been having tech issues all morning. Just the one day when you want things to be working perfectly, they go all different ways. So if you've got any tech issues, just put them in the chat box. Not like I'm going to resolve them, but maybe Darcy could try. So today we're going to touch on a little of what actually SafeWork does and the summary of the audit that's happened so far and what are the key findings. And then we'll then straight go into what are notifiable incidents. We'll touch a little upon psychosocial hazards and what are the available resources that you have, not only from SafeWork, but from other PCBUs as well. What are the other resources that you have? And at the end, we'll do a Q&A session. So now this is my most favorite slide all the time. So SafeWork's divided into two sides, the regulator and the educator. With the regulator, we've got inspectors who are basically first respondents to any complaints or notifiable incidents. Most likely, whenever you hear the term saying, oh, SafeWork's on site, it's most likely going to be inspectors that are going to that have come to either make inquiries about a complaint or make investigations about a certain incident or things like that. Investigators come into picture when inspectors find a gross negligence due to which somebody is badly injured or unfortunately have passed away. We then then investigators come into play, collect all the evidence and work closely with the Crown solicitors to put that business through prosecution. Now, technical services, we give a range of different licenses and we audit big show rides and things like that. So obviously, if we're doing big things like that, we would need industry experts on our side. So we've got engineers, chemical experts, ergonomists, people who've been working in the mining for 15 years. So we've got all subject matter experts with us. Family client liaison service are basically social workers. So unfortunately, it's not very uncommon where somebody's been badly injured and they'll never be able to get back to the same line of work they were doing at the time of the incident. So somebody's who loved ones passed away due to a work-related incident or things like that. We then put injured people or their families through the social workers to just provide them with adequate support, more guidance, and just give them more resources in the return to work space or things like that. Now, regulatory assurance, if we all pick up a small paragraph from the Act and regs and we all read it, I'm most likely sure all of us are going to interpret it in slightly different ways based on our preconceived notions, pre-existing knowledge. Regulatory assurance is the team that ensures all of us interpret the Act the same way, and a particular section in the Act applies the same way to each and every business based on whichever industry they are in. Now, coming to the educator, we've got advisory services, which is me. We'll speak about advisory services later in the presentation as well. The help center is the typical 1300 number, and we'll give you all the numbers at the end where we've got a call center, but unlike the banks, our wait times are not 1 hour or 2 hours, they're less than a minute. So if you ever want to, ask a question, just clarify something, your query will most likely be answered and resolved in the first 5 minutes. We've got a fantastic licensing team that does a range of different licenses like high-risk work license, dangerous goods license, and things like that. We've also got a library service, which is a free service where we've got a range of different resources for about different industries. Now, what is the role of our inspectors? Like I said, the first respondents to any complaints or notifiable incidents. And whenever an inspector enters site, they obviously make inquiries about a complaint, speak to people that witnessed an incident, speak to the injured person if they're present, and things like that. And we do a range of proactive and reactive stuff. Reactive stuffs are obviously complaints and incidents. Proactives are audits like this, where we feed off on a lot of return to work data, where we see where the highest claims have come from, and we form a campaign to ensure what are the gaps that these businesses are unable to identify, or we could be identifying to avoid these claims moving forward or to stop any further injuries or incidents from occurring. Now, inspectors can enter any work site with or without notice. In this more audit space, we would most likely be calling the PCBU beforehand, setting up a time with them, and then going out to do an audit so that everything's ready from your side. You have all the required documents and things like that ready. Now, inspectors can issue a range of different statutory notices, but the most common ones are improvement notice and prohibition notices. Improvement notice, as the name sounds, is a notice where they've identified a non-compliance and we would like to, but it's not imminent or immediate, so we would like to fix it. So a very common improvement notice that we do is for electrical test and tag, or not having adequate first aiders on site, or not having the emergency light lit up. Now, SafeWork SA is very, very evidence-based. So for everything, we would like to see some sort of evidence. So I've just put a slide together to show you what are the different kinds of evidence that we would be looking at in the audit process. So it could be audit reports. If you've already hired a private consultant to come do audits, then we look at those audit reports. If there's an incident, then we look at the CCTV footage. We'll be looking at the training records for employees to ensure looking at evidence to see how have you identified your hazards. Do you have a risk register in place to prove that, or just things like that? So whenever you're thinking about what do I keep to prove to the inspector that we've had all this, so these are the different types of evidence that you could be thinking of. So now I'll pass the mic on to Ali.
Thanks, 𝗪𝗲, for that background. So as 𝗪𝗲 mentioned, in the Community and Business Services team, we're actually conducting an audit into pubs, hotels, bars, etc., in relation to proactive matters. So we're looking at a range of safety hazards and risks, and some of you may have already seen these listed on the self-assessment tool, which is available on our website or via the emails that your associations have sent to you. So the risks that we're auditing during the campaign are things like the emergency plan. Is there an emergency plan? Are you testing it? Have you conducted a drill so that people know what to do in time of emergency, so that there's not a panic or it doesn't exacerbate the issue at the time? What's the electrical safety like? Are you testing and tagging? Are you piggybacking PowerPoints? Is the electrical in a moist area? Is it an hazardous circumstance? Also asking questions about notifying SafeWork SA, which is the regulator. It's a requirement under the Work Health and Safety Act that if an incident occurs, which is listed as one of the notifiable incidents, which could be serious laceration, It could be electric shock, etc. So when a notifiable incident happens at your workplace, you need to let SafeWork SA know. Obviously, after you attend to the injured worker, if there is an injured worker, make sure that they're okay, seek help for them. Contact SafeWork SA, because it's very important that you preserve the scene. Otherwise, you might be breaching a section of the Act without realising. So you need to contact us, and then the triages will assess that to see if it's appropriate to release the scene at that point, or it will come through to the Community and Business Services team. And then I'll task an inspector from my team to attend to your work site so that we can look at the matter that you've got preserved. A number of areas in the audit that are coming through is shelving and pallet racking. Make sure that they're only loaded according to their safe working loads. Okay, keep within the manufacturer's specifications. We've also been covering noise, identifying hazards with noise at the venue, and hazardous chemical registers and cylinder storage as well are covered on the audit. Slips, trips and falls are always present in hospitality venues. So that's something that you would be managing on a daily basis. If there's a spill, clean it up immediately and really monitor the floor surface in the kitchen in particular, which is where that can be most hazardous. And then, of course, general WHS is also being looked at in the audit, looking at first aid, how many first aiders you have on site, fire extinguishers, etc. Thanks, 𝗪𝗫𝗀𝗃. So we've conducted at the moment 16 audits across South Australia. And of those audits, we've issued 91 statutory notices. So that's a combination of 90 improvement notices and 1 prohibition notice. So as 𝗪𝗫𝗀𝗃 explained, the improvement notices are what they say. It's about improvement, and then we work with the business to work on a time frame for the improvement of that issue. And then the prohibition notice, that's issued if there's immediate or imminent risk at the time. And some of the sections in the regulations actually have expiations present. So things like electrical test and tag, for instance, if you haven't conducted that, it is an expiation fine under the regulations. But if SafeWork's stance on that is if you haven't had a caution expiation, or this is your first offence, we've issued caution expiation for those. So that's like a warning in that regard. So this is a breakdown of the main notices that we've issued at the moment. So you can see high there is access egress and emergency plans. So there's a code of practice about work environment that specifies access and egress is 600 millimetres. That's the minimum for safe exit in the case of an emergency. And then it links into obviously the emergency plan. Do you have a map on the wall? Does staff know where they need to go in case of an emergency? Are there appropriate equipment and processes in place? Have you tested that emergency plan? So following behind that, you'll see that there's a number of notices that we've issued for safe working load, and that's relating to shelving predominantly and pallet racking. So make sure that, and I've got some photos coming up about some non-compliance there to give you an idea. Make sure they're not bowing. Keep them in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. We've also issued a number of notices about noise, and some venues you might think, oh, it doesn't apply to me, we don't do live music. In the hospitality environment, there's a lot of areas where noise is introduced, and we included that in the campaign because there were a number of claims coming through return to work, but also we had complaints in the Community and Business Services team where employees, members of the family, etc., had complained saying, look, my family members coming home from work, they can't hear me, or they're shouting. They've been working for, a whole shift in a hospitality venue that has the music up quite loud, or they might be working in the bar area or operating perhaps gaming machines, and they're, filling the machines or bending down near the speaker or coin operations. So just be aware there are a range of areas in hospitality that do introduce the noise, and some venues are very hard surfaces and don't have a lot of soft furnishings to actually dispel that noise. Can also be equipment. If someone's working near the air compressor, which is pressurizing the drink lines, etc. There's a range of areas where noise can be an issue which you need to assess. Hazardous chemical register. You need to keep a register and know what hazardous chemicals you have on site. And then leading on from that, you would have safety data sheets about each of those chemicals, and you would train staff how to use that and to maintain their safety in the use of chemicals. Following behind that, similar notices we've issued regarding similar number of notices regarding the walk-in fridge or freezer. So what we're looking at there is there an alarm? If someone, is trapped in there, or if something occurs, can they call for help? Can they press an audible alarm? Or is there, a bell system? Does it work? Are people in the area where that alarm operates? So we don't want people getting trapped in cool rooms or freezers. And also notifying the regulator. So if there's not a system in place for the venue to notify the regulator, and people don't know the circumstance, like what is a notifiable incident, and they're not aware that they need to preserve the scene, then we're issuing notice there regarding setting that system up and training staff. So some key findings. First up on the list is electrical and RCD testing. So they fall under Regulation 150 and 165. So all electrical equipment at a workplace and the RCDs need to be regularly inspected and tested. And emergency plans I touched on earlier, that's actually Regulation 43. So they need to be prepared, maintained, tested, and employees trained. Section 38 of the Work Health and Safety Act details about notifying the regulator. And it says that all notifiable incidents must be notified to the regulator as soon as practicable. Noise. So the PCBU, which is the person conducting the business or undertaking, has the duty to identify hazards. And there's a code of practice regarding noise, and that can be accessed on our SafeWork SA site, and it's called Managing Noise and Preventing Hearing Loss at Work. Safe working loads. So ensure that the safe working loads are visible on any pallet racking you have. And for shelving, don't overload it above the manufacturer's recommendations. So we've got some photos now. So these are examples of non-compliance. So the one on the left, we've got a very dirty area. It's not maintained. We've got dust, grime, and other concerns there. We've got power boards, piggybacking, double adapters, etc. So that's not a good electrical setup. On the right there, we've also got a damaged power point. So you can see the switch on that outdoor cover is damaged. Inadequate lighting, particularly in relation to cellars at venues or hotels, can be an area where the lighting is poor. It might be only accessed infrequently, but we have found in some circumstances that the lighting's inadequate. So just have a look at that and check that people can access and egress through that area safely. If there's inadequate lighting, it can cause extra risk for slips, trips, and falls as well. So the photo on the left is about insufficient access and egress. So you can see between the shelf and the other cabinet, it's actually less than 600 millimetres. So if someone's required to get things off the shelving, it's not the required access space. The middle shelf is unsafe and unsecured. So that one, it had quite a lot of heavy items on there, and perhaps the angle of the photo doesn't show it brilliantly, but the shelf was bowing. And if it's not secured, then when items are removed or someone grabs hold of the shelf, they can pull it on top of them. So just be aware of that. The photo on the right was slippery stairs. So I think the site perhaps had some construction recently or some cleaning activities, and there was a lot of dust and debris on the stairs that made it very slippery. So the photo on the left is actually a shelving unit which is constructed with MDF, or which is similar to a chipboard type product. You'll see there on the top shelf there where we've got containers of chemicals. That's actually bowing because the chemicals have leaked onto the shelf, and you can see it's even caused a mess on the floor. So the chemicals and the moisture has affected the integrity of that shelving, making it unsafe. So that's not an appropriate shelving unit to contain hazardous chemicals. The middle picture is a maintenance tag of a fire extinguisher, showing it was last tested in December 2020. So fire extinguishers are required to be tested every 6 months. So in this case, that was out of test and a notice was issued. On the right-hand side, you can see that the exit sign is not illuminated. So in case of an emergency, exit signs need to be illuminated so that people can see where they need to go to safely exit. And we've got some examples here of compliance, or to give you an idea on some manual handling equipment. There's a lot of manual handling in the hospitality industry as well. So places may utilise pallet jack or sack trucks or keg sack trucks, for instance, at their venue to minimise manual handling of items, boxes, kegs, etc. And then on the right, you can see cylinders that are secured with the chain. So cylinders are required to be secured so that they're not inadvertently knocked over, and then it impacts on the valve and they can become a missile. So yeah, we really need to make sure that they're secured.
So thank you, Ali. So everything that Ali's covered, the non-compliances that teams identified so far, all stem from Section 19. Section 19, even for inspectors in the agency, is like a holy grail. Most of the notices that stem from Section 19. So if you look at it carefully, Section 19 talks about the primary duty of care of the PCB, which is the business or the restaurant or the organization. So it talks about safe work environment, which is access and egress, just to keep the temperatures in control, just so people can work safely without fatigue. Like a common thing that we've come across recently is on days where it's 46, there were some old restaurants where air cons were not working and people were having fatigue issues. They were not getting adequate breaks and things like that. Now, safe plant and structures all come to your machineries, your range hoods, your exhaust systems. Have they been tested? Are they working adequately and things like that? Safe systems of work could be anything from procedures. It could be anything where if people are transporting a hot dish from one end of the store to the other, do they have a procedure in place? Maybe two people put it on a trolley and then move the trolley ahead to avoid any burns or spillage and things like that. Safe use and handling of storage and plant and structures as to how you're storing a particular equipment. It could be exhaust, it could be machinery, it could be blenders, whether are you leaving it in the heat and things things like that. Adequate facilities for workers is, do they have adequate place to have lunch? Do they have a breakout room, or do they have an area where they can, take a break? Do they have toilets in workplace? Do they have access to fresh drinking water and things like that? Training and supervision, we obviously see a lot of new apprentices or young employees coming into employment, and when they're not adequately supervised, they think that they know everything, and just that enthusiastic new employee that's come into the business either doesn't follow how many pieces of chicken that needs to go into the fryer, and there's a spillage. I'm talking of past experiences, and as an inspector that I've dealt with, that I've seen, where things that could have been so easily avoided just they just get overseen, and there's an incident right there. Monitor health of workers and conditions at a workplace. This is where we speak about identification of hazards. Could be noise, could be manual handling, could be a range of different hazards. Now, moving to what should a PCBU notify? Whenever I interact with a business, there's so much ambiguity around what are really notifiable incidents and what do we need to notify. Obviously, the first one is death of a person. Now, this death of a person could be a work-related death or a non-work-related death. Now, work-related deaths could be anything where a person's operating a piece of machinery and unfortunately the machinery malfunctions and the person dies, or person who's operating a forklift unfortunately has some mishap and they die. So these are all work-related deaths that must be notified to SafeWork. Non-work-related deaths could be, somebody just walks into a restaurant and unfortunately has a medical episode and pass away. We then closely work, those need to be notified to SafeWork as well, because that incident happened in a workplace vicinity. In those instances where there's a non-work related factor involved, we then work closely with the coroner to establish that there's nothing work related that could affect the person that could have caused the death and things like that. The next thing is serious injury or illness. This is perhaps the most frequent thing that you would come across. A serious injury could be anything like your lacerations, your amputations, your burns. And a very easy thing to remember is whenever somebody gets admitted as an inpatient in a hospital, it automatically becomes a notifiable injury because they've been admitted as an inpatient. Dangerous incident. The most common dangerous incidents that we see are electric shocks. All electric shocks must be notified to SafeWork, and also chemical spills or exposure to any chemical substance are all dangerous incidents. A near miss or anything from a fall from height. Say somebody's working on removing something from a shelf and shelf automatically falls on them. It becomes a fall from height. There's no stipulated range as to how high are we talking about. We always talk about from one floor to the other. And a very easy thing and a very simple thing that we always tell PCBUs is when in doubt, always notify, because it becomes a problem when you come and identify something that's not a notifiable incident, but eventually it becomes a notifiable incident and we get to know through another complainant or another employee. Then unfortunately, the business would be at a very difficult position where they've not notified an incident or a dangerous incident and things like that. A very important thing to remember is all incident sites need to be preserved. If it's a minor injury or a minor incident, most of the times, whoever's taking the phone in the help center will say, yep, we're happy for you to release the scene. An inspector will contact you soon, but only in some incidents where somebody's badly injured and we'd like to get some details of how the incident area looked like at the time of the incident and things like that. So the incident site must be preserved. In the past, we have issued letters of warning to businesses that have not preserved the scene until an inspector came to site. So obviously, because it was their first offense, we'd issued letters of warning. But moving forward, if we see that happening again, then we would take the route of prosecutions in that matter. Now, just going slightly deeper into serious injuries. So like I said, these are your amputations, serious head injury, spinal injury. These are all clearly mentioned in the SafeWork Australia guidance sheet and also the Act. But when in doubt, always call SafeWork.
Me again. So the risk management process is what you'll be doing on a daily basis. This is a pictorial diagram that describes the prescribed steps that PCBUs need to follow in the risk management process. This is detailed in the regulations and is in particular what officers need to ensure occurs at the workplace. So if you have a look at step 1 on the top left, that's about identifying the hazards. That's where you would start. Identify the hazards, and that's Regulation 34. And then once you've got a list of the hazards that you have at your particular workplace, then you assess those risks. And all of these things are done in consultation with staff. They know the hazards, they can give you great ideas about what the risks are, and they can help you then control the risk, which is step 3. That comes under Regulation 35 and 36, where the regulations talk about the hierarchy of controls, looking at eliminating it first. Can we introduce engineering controls? Can we substitute it for something else to reduce that risk? And then step 4 is about reviewing and maintaining control measures. Okay, it's great to install an exhaust fan, but if you're not maintaining it, you're not cleaning those filters regularly or setting up a service regime, then you're not maintaining that control measure. And then the exhaust fan doesn't work, oil builds up, can cause a fire or other issues to workers in that kitchen. So that's the maintenance of control measures, and then review the control measures. Are they still fit for purpose? Is it working well within that space? Now, all of these controls under the legislation talks about reasonably practicable. So that's in relation to a duty. That means if it was at a particular time reasonably able to be done in relation to ensuring health and safety, and it weighs up a range of relevant matters. Regulation 39 is also important. That's about information, training and instruction. So we can have systems in place, but there's no point developing them and having them in a folder sitting on the shelf if the workers are not trained in that system and that process. So they really need to, your systems need to be implemented, the workers need to know what they're doing. Really important one as well is Regulation 60 for hospitality industry, which relates to musculoskeletal disorders, okay, which are linked to hazardous manual tasks. So you need to manage those risks and look at that area as well. Now, as I mentioned, all of these activities are done in conjunction with staff. So you consult with staff at every stage, okay? So under the Work Health and Safety Act, Section 46 and 47 is about the duty to consult with duty holders and workers. Okay, so if you have a look at the tiles that are on the slide there, you need to ensure that relevant information is shared with workers. Workers also need to be given an opportunity to express views and raise WHS issues. They can contribute to the decision-making process and consider their views when you're working out the processes and how to resolve certain areas. Now, this next slide, this next tile is really important, that workers are advised of the outcome. Okay, we don't just give people the opportunity to give feedback and then don't report back to them, because then they'll be left thinking, you know, the manager doesn't care, I've provided these great ideas, but it's not being listened to. When you may have ordered manual handling equipment and you're waiting for it to arrive. So let them know and keep them involved. And the last tile there says about the health and safety rep. So the health and safety representative is someone who a work group and a worker can ask for at that workplace. So if they ask you for health and safety rep, then you would go through a process which is documented in the legislation about electing a health and safety rep, and then they can work with management to solve work health and safety matters. So if you have a health and safety rep at your work site, they need to be involved with consultation around safety as well. So during our research into the hospitality industry, we actually identified that there was a high level of musculoskeletal disorders that had been reported to return to work. Okay, it was a high data in that space. So this relates to injuries or the disease of the musculoskeletal system. So it can be injuries to muscles, nerves, tendons, ligaments, joints, cartilage, or spinal injuries. It's not fun, and they often mean the work will be off for quite some time. So it may not fall into the instant injury or the areas that need to be notified to SafeWork, but to you as a business, it can really affect your bottom line if you have these injuries to workers, because it can take quite a long time to recover. So some examples are bulged or ruptured disc, torn ligaments, tears of the knee, wrist, elbow, carpal tunnel syndrome, or vibration white finger. So the key thing is here to consider eliminating the risk, okay, of hazardous manual tasks that can contribute to these musculoskeletal disorders. Consider eliminating the risk. Look at manual handling equipment. Can you do a 2-person lift? Introduce, keg sack trucks, etc. So these injuries are very common. They can develop over time, but they can also occur as a result of a single event. So be aware of that and look for ways to minimise them at your business.
Now, psychosocial hazards are currently the beast in the business, as the way I call it. The Act and regs always spoke about psychosocial health and physical health, but in 2023, it's been given a new specific regulation in the regs where it says what is a psychosocial hazard and what are the different types of psychosocial hazards. And it clearly mentions that the business has got the obligation to identify these psychosocial hazards and have control measures in place. Just like how Ali's mentioned where earlier, where the PCBU or the business has a duty to identify hazards, psychosocial hazards fall into the same category as well. They need to be identified, eliminate them if you can, but if you're unable to eliminate them, then have adequate control measures in place. Now, psychosocial hazards could be anything that's arising from a physical space to a mental space as well. And for something to be considered a psychosocial hazard, we always think of these 3 terms, whether it's frequent, prolonged, or severe, excluding the sexual harassment. So now we're all entitled to a bad day of work. We might have that one odd day where we might say something that we don't mean, but within half an hour, if you go immediately apologize to your colleague or your peer where you said something that you're not supposed to say, but if you apologize to them immediately, then that's something that's not part of the psychosocial hazard. But for example, when you're going to your boss every day and he or she belittles you every time, whenever you bring up an idea, they put you down, they sort of mock your idea, mock that you every time you bring up these concerns over a prolonged period of time, that becomes a psychosocial hazard. Now, until I've joined SafeWork SA, I used to think psychosocial hazards are only like discrimination or sexual harassment. But psychosocial hazards are a range of different things. It could be insecure work, high job demands, low job controls, lack of job role clarity, fatigue, intrusive surveillance, bullying, and inadequate reward and recognition. We also talk about remote and isolated work in a lot of regional areas where this person is working alone in a restaurant or alone in a bar where they're either scared or they have to manage everything. It could be lack of job role clarity. Somebody who's employed to do a certain task in a business but is being put in different tasks without having training could create anxiety in somebody. So just create that safe space where employees could come talk to the owners. If they're having an issue with the managers, just create that safe space where they'll be able to bypass that manager and directly go to the upper management to sort of put their issues through. Now, this is the pubs, taverns, and bars self-assessment tool. So this is available on our website. If you just go type in the search section as hospitality, this would come up. Now, this is not the exact audit tool that inspectors would be using whenever they go out to site. But if you do this, it will probably identify most of the areas that inspectors would be focusing when they're coming to do their audits. So if you've got some time, print this out, sit with your employees, go through each of these where you can identify the gaps in the business and try to fix them even before an inspector comes to site. It's a fantastic tool, so just go through it and it'll cover majority of the areas. It'll cover most of the elements from section 19 as well. Now, this is a free advisory service where you can, if you've not already been contacted by the inspector, but you run a restaurant or a bar or you work at something, you can contact us and say, look, we want an advisor to come and speak with us. And the advisor could come sit with you, go through the self-assessment tool. It's a free service and a no strings attached kind of a service. So even if we identify something, we'll say, you know, this needs to be fixed this way. This is how inspectors would be looking at. Just give that prior idea. So if you just want some, you know, if you don't have the resources to hire a professional safety consultant, but you have people that are coming directly from the regulator's office directly to you providing this free service, then it's a great service that you could be using. So do go on our website. You can book an advisor visit to come. You can even have a Teams meeting with them if you're in the regions. Just discuss any concerns, questions you might have in regards to, you know, things like this. But the only catch-22 with that service is if you've already had an inspector interaction and if there's a case file open with them and they're already issued some notices, we then can't assist those businesses that have already been contacted by the business. But once the case file is shut, then we can come in contact with you again and go through all the additional points that the inspector might have not covered. Now, if you scan the QR code, it'll take you to our website where we've got all these free resources. We've obviously got the free advisory service. I would highly urge all businesses to make use of it. Even if you don't want to use it and go through yourselves, if you have a safety consultant in your business, then go through the self-assessment tool. We've got majority of the codes of practice available on our website. And like I said, we've got a library service as well. So we've got fantastic codes of practice, standards in our library. Some of the standards are like super duper expensive. They're like $500, but most of them are available for free in our library. As long as you become a member, you can take a copy of the standard, go through it and return it back. And another important avenue that you could be contacting is the help center, the 1-300 number or the help email address. If you just have a query, just send in your query. Most likely your query will be resolved as soon as you get on a call with somebody, or if you don't have the time to speak to somebody and your query is huge, just put it in an email and send it through and they'll respond back with all the adequate resources, adequate information, what will inspectors be looking at and things like that. Now I'll hand over to the representative from WHS SA to speak a little about what kind of resources they'd provide. Hey Reese, are you there? I don't think Reese is online, so I'll just carry on behalf of Reese, if that's okay. So like I said, there's a QR code. If you scan that, it'll directly take you to the website. WHS SA is a not-for-profit. Oh, there Reese is. I will go for it, Reese. Darcy, can you allow Reese to speak? I give him the option to speak, if that's okay. Like I said, Tech and I are not the best of friends, so we'll see how this goes.
Yep, hopefully you can hear me now.
Perfect, we can hear you.
Yep.
Go for it, Reese.
Thank you. Just very briefly, so my name's Reese and I'm the Workplace Relations Policy Manager at WHS SA. If there were any COBs who are WHS SA members, as well as taking advantage of all the great resources SafeWork SA have. And I would also, again, urge people to consider using that free advisory service SafeWork has available. But definitely you can come to us just if you've got any general WHS questions. So some guidance on meeting your obligations, how many first aids do we need, about how do we kind of try to deal with noise, musculoskeletal issues, and got improvement notices, etc. We also have a number of WHS templates available for members, and we can also at times put out bulletins and updates to members on really major WHS matters. And lastly as well, the other thing I just want to highlight is that we do have some partners who we can put you in contact with who can provide that WHS support. For example, some people to help with hazardous chemical control, and also one of our partners who can come out and do a bit of a kitchen audit for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Reece. I've given Reece only 30 seconds, so poor Reece had to put everything into that 30 seconds. We've got United Workers Union. I think Tanya is from United Workers Union. Tanya, are you in? Can you raise your hand or something? Yeah. Darcy, can you unmute Tanya's mic?
Thank you very much for that, Darcy. So my name's Tanya. I'm one of the hospitality organisers at United Workers Union, also known as UWU. Our side is obviously a bit more coming from the workers' perspective. So health and safety exists obviously in every workplace, and workers also have a really important role to play, ensuring their own safety at work and then the safety of their colleagues at work. United Workers Union's role in the workplace is to educate and support members in all facets of WHS. This includes help introduce workplace HSR structures if there are none in the workplace, or to support the ones that are already currently existing. We also do provide training for new and existing health and safety reps, as well as obviously through SafeWork SA and Clubs SA as well. There's all those trainings available. And we also, as organisers, also actually hold work health and safety permits as well. So we actually have the ability to support members and actually conduct workplace health and safety entries ourselves as well, and work obviously with SafeWork in the reporting, and work with the employers to obviously help assist to resolve any of the issues that arise from those entries. And then obviously in the event of a workplace injury occurring for our members, we obviously support our members through the whole process of the application, recovery, and the eventual return to work process. So we're kind of there from the beginning to end of everything in relation to workplace health and safety. And obviously by working together, not only with your co-workers, the employers and the union, we can obviously make sure that ensure your workplace is safer and healthier for everybody.
Thanks, Tanya. We've got Owen from Australian Hotels Association. Owen, can you raise your hand? Is Owen in today? Anybody from 𝗬𝗀𝗄𝗁? Yep, Owen's there. Darcy, can you unmute Owen's mic, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thanks, Owen.
Thank you. So from the Hotels Association perspective, similar to what Reece has mentioned, we obviously can provide services to members as well in the health and safety area. We've got a lot of information in our members portal section. We have a work health and safety package, which has got a whole range of policies and procedures and templates that we can provide. We've also developed a work health and safety manager's guide, which is available to obviously all of our members as well, which is specifically catering towards the hospitality sector. And we also have a whole range of safe work procedures as well that are specific to hospitality that our members can pick up. So if you do have any queries at all in relation to work health and safety, please contact Sarah Legault or myself or 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗪𝗏 as well, and we can provide assistance there as well. And also, I should mention, if a member did get an improvement notice or a prohibition notice or had questions around audits and things like that, we can also assist with helping them through that process as well.
Thanks, Owen. So we're almost at the end of the presentation. Like we've all summed up, just want to sum it up quickly that you've got a range of different resources. I understand sometimes safety is one of those topics where you might feel alone, and you might, think about, oh, how am I going to go about this? What's the fix for this? So you're not alone in this process. You've got all these adequate resources, people that are trying to help you. Even as an audit and receiving an improvement notice is not wrong or not a very bad thing. It's about where somebody's identified an issue for you. And the way inspectors would be looking at is, we've identified an issue and we want to fix that issue so that nobody gets injured or nobody has any safety issues stemming up from that. So that's the idea of issuing a prohibition notice or an improvement notice as well. Initially, when I was an inspector, whenever I used to go to restaurants used to think that, oh my God, if I get an improvement notice, everybody's going to know, it might affect our image and things like that. But we have a strict privacy and confidentiality provision. If SafeWorks ever issued you with an improvement notice, other than you and the employees in that business and SafeWork, we would never go out and say, oh, we've issued 20 improvement notices to this business or 2 prohibition notices to this business. We would never do that. And the whole idea of them is to just put things into perspective and give a timeline for everything and just fix those matters. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and quickly jump into any questions that have come about in the chat box.
Actually, I noticed there's a couple of questions around walk-in fridge freezers. Why we've included that in the audit tool is, unfortunately, we have had a death in South Australia where a worker was trapped in a freezer and died of hypothermia. So it's quite important to have an alarm, a bell, if something malfunctions in there or the worker has concerns, they can actually call for help. If something goes wrong with the latch or the locking mechanism or the hinge or something, there becomes frost around the opening or some other concern, that worker can actually seek help. So that's the importance of the alarm in relation to, particularly is the walk-in types, walk-in freezers or cool rooms. Yeah.
I've had a case when I was an inspector where there was a freezer room where an employee had walked in, and it's still, every time I think about that case, it just gives me like, oh my God, thank God this employee was safe. But the issue there was an alarm, but that alarm could only be heard in the freezer room. So sometimes you might have everything, but if it's not just working in the right way, then it's as good as not having it. Obviously, if the alarm could only be heard in the freezer room, that employee couldn't, nobody knew she was stuck in the freezer room. Lucky for her, 15 minutes later, another employee walked in to use the freezer room and she'd found this employee without any injury or anything. But thinking about it, what if it was the end of shift or things like that, where easily things could go really wrong. Any more
That's a
questions?
good point that 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗪𝗏 says. So you need to make sure that the alarm is audible where workers are, where you can provide help.
Any questions, guys? You can raise your hand, unmute your mic, and maybe ask any questions or just put it in the chat box. Also, a quick FYI that this webinar has been recorded. I think you can view this webinar in a couple of days when it will be available on the website. So because you've all registered, we'll also send you an email in a couple of days just to sum up all the resources that you've got available at your hand that you could utilize. Just a quick thing to clarify in regards to HSRs that Ali's pointed out. So any business, it's not mandatory to have a HSR unless and until any single employee asks for a HSR in a business. It's very HSRs are basically representatives and can act in form of consultants on behalf of the work group with the PCBU. So I'm a HSR advisor, so I'll always vouch for more HSRs as possible. So it just makes consultation process easy, raising concerns easy. So always think about it in that space as well. Any more questions that are coming through? Ali, can you see any questions?
No, I can't see anyone with their hand raised or new questions.
There's a
No,
question.
we've got one from Ben by the looks. Ben's asking how's the audits progressing and remaining. So yeah, we'll continue to work through a range of sites, Ben. So a lot of our sites have been selected based on Return to Work SA data. So looking at sites that have the higher, targeting the highest claims data initially, and then working through different businesses. So we'll continue to do audits in the pub space, and this campaign is up until the end of June. But I can see if we have complaints going forward in a pub, hotel, or a club, the inspectors will be able to utilise this audit tool for any of those sort of future inspections. But the main campaign will be continuing to work on until the end of June.
In regards to free resources and things like that, the website is your best place. It's like the one-stop shop for any resources. We're constantly updating it with new resources and things like that. We also have an e-newsletter that goes out every quarter with any changes in legislations that are coming about, any new code of practice, any new standards that might be relevant to your industry. Please feel free to type to that version of information that you could access instead of reading pages and pages of information. So keep checking the SafeWork SA website or the social media posts where we post any new upcoming webinars or any free resources that are available to you. But you've also got the help email address, like I reiterated earlier, where you can ask any questions, resolve any queries and things like that. Any more questions? Looks like we've clarified everything, Ali. No more questions.
Now, well, thank everyone for logging on today. Safety is sometimes not the highest priority when you're trying to. We appreciate you trying to run a business. You've got a lot of things to consider. So thanks very much for your time, and you will find it will help your business in the long run.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your time. Like I said, this webinar will be recorded and it will be available on the website soon, and you'll all get an email. So if you've got any colleagues or any peers that you think that could benefit and that couldn't attend today, do send it to them. They could, they need some point that they were thinking about that we could have discussed today that could be useful for them. Thank you so much, everybody.